When you think of the original 6 Avengers, who's the first one that springs to mind? Is it Iron Man and his brilliant character arc culminating in Endgame? Is it Steve Rogers and his uplifting speeches and epic moment? Maybe it's Hulk and how angry you are at his utterly wasted potential. Well, one thing's for sure. I doubt very many of you thought of Hawkeye, which I for one think is kinda sad. By no means is Hawkeye my favorite of the original 6 Avengers, but honestly he's top 3 for sure.
Doesn't matter what you did, what you were. If you go out there, you fight, and you fight to kill. Staying here, you're good. I'll send your brother to come find you, but if you step out that door, you are an Avenger.
He completely steals the show from me in Age of Ultron and is one of my favorite parts of Endgame. He also has a very compelling dynamic with various other MCU characters and has one of my favorite Disney Plus shows. Today, I want to dive into his character a bit and show him the love I believe he deserves. Phase 1. Phase 1 unfortunately doesn't do Hawkeye really any justice, and I believe is the reason why he's not more beloved. For starters, he's the only one of the original 6 Avengers to not have their own movie or a major role in someone else's film. Cap, Hulk, Iron Man, and Thor all got their own movie, with Black Widow being a major recurring character in Iron Man 2. Hawkeye appears for maybe 5 minutes if I'm being generous in the first Thor movie, and then spends over half the runtime of Avengers completely mind-controlled by Loki, before finally getting to actually be part of the team at the final battle. This of course means that as an audience it's hard to grasp onto his character, or really lack thereof, only being carried by the frankly great performance of Jeremy Renner. Phase 2. Hawkeye has a single appearance in Phase 2, but in my opinion it's where he gets to shine the absolute most as the heart and soul of the Avengers. He serves as a relatable connection to the audience in a way. He's the grounded family man in a team full of people that can turn into giant green monsters, are 70-year-old super soldiers, or have the intellect to casually create time travel. His dynamics with the rest of the cast are also put on full display during the various scenes at his home. One of my favorite moments is when the Avengers first arrive at his house and find out he has a family. Tony has a few funny lines about them possibly being agents and that they had no idea about them, but I love how much this scene humanizes Hawkeye. The other Avengers have their love interests intertwined with their superhero lives in one form or another, but he keeps them off the radar and hidden because he cares about them above all else, even hiding them from his best friends. Another thing I love about him in this film is the dynamic with Wanda and Quicksilver. Him and Quicksilver have a funny little rivalry that spans a majority of the movie. I would have loved for this to be a continuous thing, but unfortunately Quicksilver dies, sacrificing himself for Hawkeye.
You didn't see that coming? You didn't see that coming?
His dynamic with Wanda is different though, as even though earlier in the movie they were on opposing sides, when she begins to break down, he tries to console her. This does of course lead to the iconic "the city's flying and I'm a guy with a bow and arrow, none of this makes any sense" line, which is genuinely one of the funniest parts of the film. But there's a lot more that could be said about Hawkeye in just this movie alone, but for the sake of time, that'll bring us to Phase 3. Hawkeye had 2 appearances in Phase 3, and while I don't have much to say about him in Civil War, as he takes a pretty big backseat during that movie, I do have a lot to say about him in Endgame. Hawkeye's absence in Infinity War was an absence that people really felt and were curious about where he was. Well, the cold open to Endgame shows us that he was retired and with his family. That was until a snap erased his family and sent him spiraling. He traveled around the world, now calling himself the Ronin, and killed criminals as a sort of vigilante. It wasn't until his best friend Natasha Romanoff finds him and offers him a way to get his family back, signifying his return to the Avengers. His heartbreak doesn't end there, unfortunately, as he is soon tasked with getting the Soul Stone, which requires a sacrifice. He initially tries to convince Natasha to let him sacrifice himself. She doesn't allow him to, and in the end, is forced to watch his closest friend die. Clint's arc in Endgame is one of the saddest and most tragic in the MCU, but by the end he at least gets his family back, even if he did lose a few of his close friends along the way. Phase 4. This brings us to his latest appearance, not counting What If, where he actually takes center stage. Kind of. Hawkeye, the show from 2021, is actually in my opinion one of the better shows that the MCU has produced. Kate is a very likable character and has some great chemistry with Clint, as well as it pays off a lot of the setups in the previous projects he appeared in. Hawkeye's stint as Roman comes back to haunt him, as does Natasha's sister Yelena, who believes that Clint killed her sister. It makes their scenes compelling, and I especially love how their conflict climaxes with Clint convincing her of the truth behind Natasha's death.
What did she say?
She told me about how you got separated as kids. She was flying that plane. I asked her if she was scared. All she could think about is that you were safe. That never changed, Elena. She loved you. I always wanted you safe.
It shouldn't have gone this way. If I was there, I could have stopped it. I could have changed it.
Nothing was gonna stop her, Elena. You know Natasha. She made her choice.
I loved her so much.
Me too. I'm sorry.
It was actually a pretty powerful scene between two characters I really like and enjoy. But besides that, most of the plot of Hawkeye actually surrounds him mentoring a young Kate Bishop, who is clearly being set up to take the role of Hawkeye as he seems to be losing his sense of hearing. And in conclusion, Hawkeye doesn't have as many appearances or even standout moments compared to some of the other Avengers. However, I think his best moments are consistently some of my favorites. I don't know what kind of future lies ahead for his character, but I definitely look forward to seeing more of him.
The fancy thing?
Yeah, formal.
You know, you don't have to do this. It is part of the job.